Hi everyone! Welcome to Voices from the Land, a collaborative series from Farm School NYC and The New Harvest.
Today I'm speaking with the wonderful Amara Ullauri, who is the founder and ecosystem steward of Ayni Herb Farm. So tell me a little bit about the beginnings of Ayni.
Thank you so much for the invitation to chat. The seeds of Ayni Herb Farm began to be planted back in 2017, I'd say. I was already farming in New York City, but found myself constantly just feeling very burnt out and exhausted of trying to do, this food justice work within very exploitative institutions. So I found myself constantly gravitating towards the herbs and spaces where I could find healing for myself. And eventually that inspired me to deepen my study about herbalism as a way to be able to offer that support to the students that I was working with across many different urban farms. Fast forward to 2020, I decided to move back upstate to the Hudson Valley, which is where I grew up. And I wanted to dedicate time to cultivating relationship with local farmers and scale up my farming practices in the hopes of finding a space where I can begin planting these seeds to have an herb farm that centers the wellness of BIPOC and queer and trans folks.
I think one thing that is interesting to me about Ayni is the principle that it's based upon, which is reciprocity. So I love that you're like, okay, we're here, but we're giving back to New York City. We're building community with those around us. So how did you sort of land upon that principle? I guess what came first, the principle or Ayni?
It's definitely an honor to feel very connected to my roots and my homelands in Ecuador. I think the principle has always been there throughout my farming. And when I was starting to think about stewarding this space, it felt important to ground it in a value and a practice that resonated with not just me and my culture, but with many cultures that have a foundation of reciprocity that perhaps have been lost or forgotten due to colonial violence. And so part of growing medicine, sharing medicine is not just the consumption of the herbs, but in that process also remembering a lot of our relationship with each other and the land. It felt like it was the principle that really captured the essence that I was trying to share with my community and the commitment that I was bringing to the land.
So I love that you start to talk about your roots and traditions in Ecuador. We're neighbors. My family's from Guyana. So I would love to know, what are some of the herbs that you're growing on Ayni that are from Ecuador?
The main Andean herb that I love to grow is lemon verbena. We call it cedron. It's such a fragrant, citrusy, aromatic herb that to me, both smelling, interacting with it, drinking tea, just brings back memories of home. So it has that essence of homecoming, which I think is so important for immigrant communities, queer and trans folks who oftentimes felt isolated from home, from community. And so I think it helps to cultivate that sense of belonging. And so it's one of my favorite herbs to grow. And there are many other herbs that are not native to the Andes, but have been incorporated into a lot of Andean medicinal practice, like chamomile, nettles, different types of holy basils, mints. One of my other favorite plants to grow is amaranth. Some folks call it callaloo as well. In the Andes, one of the more popular types of amaranth is the red amaranth. We call it taco or kiwicha, and we use it both for their leaves and for the seeds, for the grain. And so all of these herbs combined are used in a really nutritive tea called agua de montes or horchata. They're very different than the rice-based horchata. And so it feels really special to be able to grow some of those herbs here that reflect some of the medicinal practices of back home.
And I guess that brings me to another question in talking about the food justice conversation. I think in my context, I only think of callaloo as just a food. But I know that when we think about food justice, there's a lot that we don't always encompass, and that is herbs and medicine. So yeah, can you talk a little bit about what you think is missing in the conversation?
So a central tenet, right, of food justice is that all people and communities across social, racial, economic lines have that equitable access to participating in like the growing, the selling, the buying, the eating of fresh and nutritious food. And I think so many of us are involved in making that happen. But the issue comes when philanthropic foundations or even government institutions and programs who proclaim to support these initiatives often create false rules and regulations that do not actually allow communities to choose what food they want to grow, eat, and distribute. For me, I see this as a way to uphold colonial binaries between what is considered food and what is considered medicine. And so many of us come from cultures that do not distinguish between food and medicine. And yet so many programs refuse or are not allowed to include or fund medicinal herbs for community food access programs. That really results in a fragmented food system where some foods or medicines are then restricted to only those who can pay, and the rest only gets what they are allowed to receive. One of the main ways that I've been able to distribute medicinal herbs is through mutual aid initiatives because they are community run. And so we're able to create a direct communication so that I'm able to receive and hear from community members about what foods and medicines are important for them to have access to.
Tell me a little bit about the mutual aid that you've been able to do and like what that sort of looks like. Are people coming to you and asking for specific things, or are you doing a lot of preventative care?
Assessing community needs is definitely influences like even our crop plan, like what herbs and like plants and seeds we're choosing to grow on the farm. If I were to like categorize a lot of like the herbs that are growing there, we find mainly herbs that support the nervous system, herbs that support the respiratory system, immunity, and digestive relief. These are main things that show up in our communities that are impacted by state-sanctioned violence and worsening climate crisis and ongoing pandemics. It's this back and forth conversation that influences what we choose to grow. And I think that that's how our whole food system should also look like, right? With direct influence and input from the communities who are both receiving and supporting the local food system.
Yeah, it also speaks to the fact of like how outdated a lot of our systems are. I guess when we're thinking about care, I know one of the things that has been top of mind for you, and I'm sure other folks at Ayni, is public health and talking about COVID. So for you, when it comes to safety, like what does pandemic solidarity kind of look like? Because I agree with you, we are still in this pandemic.
One of the reasons I herbal medicine, right, is because I think it's just one part of collective care. And so I want to see that implemented in the way that we care for one another and within the farming community as well. I remember the honor and the gratitude we all held for essential workers, which included farmers.
Yeah.
Because we were ultimately keeping the economy alive during lockdown, keeping folks, fed, and yet we are increasingly exposed to airborne viruses and lessening protections. In my case, as a farmer, I have witnessed the effects of a lack of COVID precautions and a lack of benefits such as paid sick leave amongst farmers. I read the study from 2023 that looked into like 300 farm workers in California, and like 65 of them developed long COVID. And in my personal experience with the farmers that I used to work with, like from like a 9-person team, like 5 of them have developed like long COVID symptoms and can no longer farm or have severely reduced their ability to farm full time. So besides the very real debilitating like health impacts of COVID, there's also like the socio-emotional effects of lack of COVID protections in our workplaces. Some people have called this a pandemic of abandonment. because people who still care about COVID, whether because they are disabled, high risk, or simply don't want to get sick, are slowly being erased from public space. The grief of loss of friendships can be very overwhelming, and it's just one example of this larger experience of ableism in our society, which is already so embedded within the agricultural industry, right? In my advocacy work and also in trying to create structures of care at Ayni, I've been very much inspired by the work of many other organizers. And I think the best way to summarize pandemic solidarity is laid out by the Pandemic Solidarity for the Long Haul initiative. And so they have a few points. So one of them is we must tell the truth about the crisis, meaning that profit-driven public health guidelines have failed to keep us informed and deprived us of the tools to keep each other safe. We must also support our inherent right to health and dignity, because we must reject the narrative that it is too costly, unnecessary, or too difficult to care for one another against a very deadly and disabling virus. We must declare that human life is more precious than capitalist economies. So we must refuse that to be collateral damage for the profit-driven interests of the ruling class. And lastly, we must commit to COVID safety for all and not just for some, meaning we must oppose a culture of ableism, eugenics, and racism to build a world that's invested in community care and liberation for all people. And they have a very clear 11-point outline of actions for pandemic solidarity that I'm happy to share with you as well.
Yeah, I think so much of it is really disheartening when folks are trying to care for themselves. And I think you're right in that farming is steeped in ableism. And that's even speaking more deeply to the disposability of how we treat farm workers, of how we treat farm hands and people who do the work. You and I can both share and talk about how farming has been something that's been undervalued and invisible for much of its history, especially here in the United States. So I think this pandemic solidarity, these sort of principles are really, really key in terms of really focusing on what the actual cost of this work is. I think another aspect of safety that I wanted to get into is talking about the current ICE raids and attacks on not just folks that are undocumented, but folks that look like you and I, everyone they just deem as whoever. What does it look like on the ground for farmers and farm workers near you, either at Ayni or just the Hudson Valley as a whole?
Currently, farm workers in this area and, across Turtle Island, I'd say are terrified to come to work, worried about being detained on their way to work or back from work, picking up their kids from school, are worried about being separated from their families and their community that loves and supports them. We wanted to focus specifically on the food system. It's totally destabilizing for a food system that depends on this labor force, right? And to me, as I'm observing and supporting folks, so one of our community partners is Columbia County for Sanctuary Movement, and they've been doing excellent work with rapid response teams, providing legal aid and support. They also have a food access program that we provide herbs for. It's important to remember that what we're seeing right now, it didn't just happen overnight. These ICE raids have been going on, and that New York State specifically has created the infrastructure in order for this to happen today. New York State has been complicit in detaining and incarcerating immigrants, forcing family separation, and terrorizing our communities for decades. And I was recently looking into this, that New York State has 7 sites for detaining immigrants, along with 2 federally operated sites and over 76 jails and detention centers across New York State that ICE is permitted to detain immigrants. And so we have this infrastructure that supports, the terrorizing of our communities. And right now there is an ongoing campaign urging Governor Hochul to support the New York for All Act, which we protect immigrant communities from ICE. It prevents local law enforcement from collaborating with ICE in assisting with raids and arrests. It also prohibits ICE from entering private property without a judicial warrant, and it limits the access to state information databases. But as far as I know, currently Governor Hochul has only proposed like a half measure of this, which only prohibits the formal contracts between police and ICE, but does nothing to prevent more informal ways that local police already collaborate with ICE. And, this doesn't even touch on the previous point that I made, that New York State already has so much infrastructure, right, that allows for the detainment and terrorizing of our communities. And so the New York for All Act is like one step towards the overall abolishment of ICE.
So in your eyes, what can we do to protect one another?
We need to stay vigilant to anti-masking bills that threaten our health and safety. Right now, we see a lot of very real and valid concern about ICE agents wearing face coverings. And we know that they do that to protect themselves from being doxxed, right, for their identities being revealed. And yet, within many of our social justice organizing spaces, I've oftentimes seen this refusal to incorporate masking policies, which limit our ability to keep each other safe from airborne viruses and limit our ability to keep ourselves safe from surveillance. There's been this emergence of anti-masking bills that have been introduced, and some counties, like in, I believe, Nassau County in Long Island, and I believe another local town in upstate New York, has already implemented local anti-masking bans on this premise that masking equals increased crime rates. I see this as an ongoing effort to minimize COVID-19 and other airborne viruses that are on the rise, and a way to exaggerate concerns about crime related to this, when we know, in fact, a lot of these policies have emerged actually with the rise of pro-Palestine, currently organizing to protect our immigrant neighbors. And so I encourage us all to look into and stay vigilant, and not just do that outwardly, but think about it inwardly in your day-to-day practices, in your community gathering spaces. What are the ways that we can keep each other safe through masking, right? Testing regularly, having conversations about just exposure, and sharing those resources and tools to keep each other safe.
So is there anything else that you'd like us to know?
Yeah, just wanted to share one more resource in terms of planning safer in-person gatherings, especially while we're organizing, all these amazing mutual aid initiatives, and we want to bring community together. We often see this phrase we keep us safe, and that goes beyond we keep us safe from police violence, right? We keep us safe from each other and airborne viruses and all the things, right? One amazing resource that I use a lot in planning for our in-person gatherings at the farm is through the People CDC. They have a safer in-person gathering toolkit that outlines all the different considerations that you should look into when planning in-person gathering, just so that we are really intentionally living into this commitment to community safety and care. I welcome you all to come visit Ayni this summer. We have volunteer days, and I think it's a good way to also see how it's possible to gather in person while upholding COVID safety practices, and keeping each other safe and held.